Some things are hard to forget, and yet there are many things that we need to forget. What are you holding on to? What's holding on to you? Motivated forgetness. That's our topic on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast. This is a program where we just get to love on, encourage, and speak perspective into the lives of educators of all shapes and sizes and levels and responsibilities and roles. It takes a team, and hopefully you've got a team that you can really love on and thrive with and figure it out. We know that we've entered, of course, a whole new era of education. It's different, and we've actually shared a blog post this week on schoolgrowth.com about that concept. About, we know that there's a lot of technology innovation and other things that are causing schools to have to reconsider their value proposition and how they're structured and how they operate and how they innovate. And so, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of innovation that's happening, and some new muscles being developed, right? We get to learn how to ask better questions, harder questions, and even think about schools in a completely different paradigm. And that doesn't come easy. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of risks and collaboration and trust. And I cannot emphasize enough of that the schools that will thrive through these periods of disruption and reconsideration will be those that trust each other, who are able to ask harder questions to challenge some of the mental models and are able to find a way through, because the only way through this is through this. And that's something that we've emphasized a lot in the Educators Among Us podcast, is we have to have a resilience. We have to have genuinely that growth mindset if we're going to get through this. And this program is designed to give you some perspective on that, to encourage you to stick with it. Come on, you're in the game. You're in this in a way that you get to change lives. What a joy, what a privilege that you've been entrusted with that responsibility. Hey, do you remember? That's it's a question I get asked a lot. So like Tammy may ask me, she say, "Hey, don't you remember?" That's the other version of that, is because there's sort of some assumption behind that. Wait, don't you remember? It depends on the emphasis of that's placed on different words there that changes the meaning. But do you remember? Memories are important, but selective memories may be even more important. Right? And that's that ability to choose what we remember and what we don't. Right? So it's like Elie Wiesel once said, "Without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there could be no civilization, no society, no future," right? But memory without forgiveness, that's a curse. It's a curse, right? It becomes something that keeps us. It becomes something that actually becomes, in a curse, it becomes evil. It becomes something that undermines what we're capable of. It undermines love. It undermines leadership. And we know that our responsibility is to love and to lead. Whether you're doing that with educators as an administrator, or whether you're working in a role where you're a teacher, staff member, whatever, our calling to do this work is to love and to lead. Right? And so, it's strange. It's strange how two people, and this happens to Tammy and I all the time, right? It's strange how two people can be sitting in the same room, right? We're listening to the same people, the same dialogue, the same decisions, and yet we can leave that room with completely different recollections. what we remember of what occurred, the intent of what was said, the body language, right? Because we're not just reading, we're not just listening to the words. We're trying to kind of pick up on what's really being said, and then the next steps. And we can leave that conversation with very different versions of that. And it's selective memory. It's a thing. I mean, it's a real element of what we're capable of, and it turns out it actually can be a distinct strength. Right. Sometimes it's referred to as motivated forgetting. I mean, that's a real term. We've one in a previous episode we talked about motivated reasoning, and this is about motivated forgetting, or I like to refer to it as forgetness. Forgetting on purpose. That's a power. It's actually a distinctive power because it allows us the ability to actively prune. There's some memories we probably shouldn't hang on to because they impede our growth. They keep us from becoming what we could be because our mind is consumed in that previous event or the words that we felt, the emotions or the whatever about the experience, right? It gives us that motivated forgetting allows us to suppress, to kind of keep that down below. It may be there, but we can kind of keep it down and deep in and allow us to kind of move on. And sometimes, it's not just suppressing, but it's allowing us then to filter out that those memories, that information, right? That becomes a vital part of mental health, of just being able to move beyond that, to let it go, right? And that becomes an essential quality of highly effective educators because we're working with people who we're asking to grow. Right? We're asking them to change. And the likelihood that they're going to make unfortunate, irresponsible, bonehead decisions. I mean, come on, that's part of our work is helping them grow past that, to overcome some of those inhibitions or limitations or behavior patterns. That's what we do. And so we particularly in the field of education have to master forgetness. Right? It's like Henry Ward Beecher once said, a wise man forgets what he cannot amend, and a fool remembers what he cannot remedy. And there is a wisdom in being able to accept. And this is what we mean by this idea of forgetness is we're willing to accept it is what it is, and I'm not going to linger in sort of the tensions around, well, it ought to be, it should be. Instead, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to allow it to be. And that gives me a freedom because otherwise I get wrapped up in a foolishness that causes me to create burdens within that also limit the connections without. And that's just no way to live. That's a reality that we're smart enough to figure that out. Listen, our memory, it isn't a 4K video recording. I mean, it's not even sometimes accurate. We remember what we want to remember. That's that selective memory part, right? We have different motivations, and we have to check our motivations, right? It's our memories are a creative remake of actual events. It's a remix, right? And so now there is a benefit to that editing. Being able to edit memories, that allows us to adapt the narrative to sometimes our own purposes. It allows us to make it fit. It also allows us to extract useful insights. There's elements of there that we can use that for our benefit. We can learn from. We can incorporate, and then there's other things we just have to kind of discard and move on. I mean, you can't keep it all in your head, and the version that you're keeping is tainted. It has a lens to it that's not necessarily true. We can see some of the same events. We can be in that same room and come out with a completely different impression of what happened. That's selective memory, right? And now that selective memory also gives us the wonderful power to clean the board. You've got a whiteboard perhaps in your room, or you've seen one where sometimes someone used a permanent marker on that board, or it's gotten scratched and you can't clean the board, and that's aggravating sometimes because you want to kind of start fresh. Sometimes you want to wipe the board clean. And in this sense, essence, in relationships, that means that we're allowing others the freedom to change. We're allowing them the freedom to be released from whatever happened previously and to choose a new direction, to learn, to grow, right? That's the calling of educators. That's the essence of what we do, right? So this is not a subtle point. The ability to exercise and master forgetness. Because we can deflect the curse of foolishness that comes with ungrace, that becomes a root of bitterness. And it's so sad sometimes that we experience schools and other organizations where there's such a bitterness in the organization, in the culture. It's embedded, it has deep roots, and it takes concerted effort to be able to pull that out and let it go. And sometimes unfortunately you have to deal with some people in those situations that just can't seem to get there, and we have to make some difficult decisions, right? Because our calling in education leadership is to build a culture in which students can thrive, and that means that we know we're going to deal with conflict. We're going to have situations that cause us to have to process emotions and be able to give them grace, give them a forgiveness, a release from the event, even though they haven't asked for it. They haven't sort of earned it either. One thing I do, said Paul in Philippians 3:13. One thing I do. And he's saying this in a way that says, hey, I've learned something and I want to pass this on to you. This is an important lesson that I've had to learn. One thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead. One thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards the future. I'm working towards it. I'm pressing on. I'm not allowing myself to be bound by the chains of the past. Relationships and influence, they get crushed under the weight of kept contempt. Right? Well, we've held on to it. The reasons why we don't like them, or the reasons why we don't trust them, the reasons why we don't let them in. Kept contempt. Right? It's impossible sometimes to build the bridges that are necessary for our work when we're continuing to hang on to those things. Mastering the skill of forgetness is the most useful method because it allows us to free colleagues, free students, to free parents from past decisions, words, and actions. And obviously, it's also a way to free us. Now, they may not get it. They may not get what happened. They may not own it. But reviving and reliving those memories, it limits our growth, our own personal growth. It puts those diseases of dislike, those diseases of ungrace into our spirit, into our minds, into our souls, and that reduces our mental capacity. It steals our joy. Right? So let it go. Accept it. It is what it is. Live and let live. Whatever advice you would give, right? Even if you would say, hey, I'm forgetting what is behind and I'm straining towards what is ahead. Because why? Because we've both got better ways to use our gifts and our time. Those precious gifts, that precious time. We have a limited amount, right? And so don't waste it. Don't waste it there. Instead, focus on what your calling is. Remember who you are. Right? Exercise your power of motivated forgiveness this week, my friend, to let the light of freedom shine in and through you. Right? That's a gift. That's a strength. That's a skill. It takes practice to exercise motivated forgiveness. So, what are you hanging on to? What are you hanging on to? What as you're moving into either a new year or you're in the middle of your year, depending on where you are here in July 2026, wherever you are, right? What's hanging on to you? What are you hanging on to? And could it be hanging you? Could it be actually choking off your impact, your influence, your calling because you can't let it go? Hopefully you're able to find that grace, find that ability to master that motivated forgiveness. A coaching question to consider as you're going through this week. Did I do my best to purposefully forget today? Did I do my best to purposefully forget today? Love him and lead him, my friend. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.